Welcome to The Wave Forward, the podcast that dives deep into how technology shapes our health and well-being. From digital wellness to tech innovation to the effects of electromagnetic fields, we cover the environmental, social, and physical implications of technology. Ready to navigate the digital landscape with confidence? Set your dial to Discovery and tune in. You're listening to The Wave Forward. Kassie Grecula, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So we were talking about this before we started recording, but I had a video had popped up of you. I think it was just like a little clip in this kind of more extensive video of you telling, was it your niece or your daughter? Who was that you were telling?
My little sister.
Your little sister. Okay. And you were telling your little sister to get the AirPods out of your ear. And I just thought the video was so cute. And so I had reached out about doing the podcast, and it turns out that you had already been using the same products that I use, which is Aries Tech. So I was like, oh, cool. Let's come on here and like tell the full story, because I love getting people's insight into how they came into realizing that EMF was a problem, because it is so taboo. It's so tinfoil hat. It's so like this thing that we just out of sight, out of mind. We're just ignoring it as it's literally being deployed all around us. And then there comes a time where it's like you peek behind the curtain and like all of a sudden you realize it's a problem. So I love hearing the full story of like how people get to that place. So let's just start from the beginning of like, where did your health journey really begin?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's everywhere now, but I am one of the people that have been dealing with mold toxicity. So I had lived in a house for 4 years in Connecticut. I didn't know at the time that it was just completely riddled with mold. But looking back, and as I started kind of like following the breadcrumbs to mold toxicity as a problem, it was like completely obvious that that house had so much mold. There was water leaks in the basement. It always had flooded. At one point, I was living on the first floor of a house, and the girl on the second floor, something happened with her shower, her bathtub, but like it was raining in my kitchen, basically.
Oh my gosh.
The ceiling was just like dripping. I had to like do a ton of cleanup, and ever since then, especially, like it just never felt the same in there. But I had met my boyfriend Kip around the same time that all my symptoms appeared. I had known him for maybe 2 weeks, and then suddenly my skin just completely got buried under like fungal acne, cystic acne everywhere. I'm like, what is going on? And so I really stayed in the dark about what was happening while I lived in that house. We were trying, we actually went vegan while we lived there, which is completely not my diet now, but it made it considerably worse. Those were some of the worst pictures I have of my skin.
Wow.
Eating, like a ton of fruit, all the bad stuff, all like the Beyond Burgers that we thought were so healthy. Totally.
Oh yeah. Soy milk in the coffee. Like
Oh, yeah. It lasted only like maybe a month or two before we went completely opposite carnivore. And I actually noticed a little bit of like relief, but like nowhere near healing. And so that's kind of when we started red light therapy. I was trying all of the topical new creams that I would read about, and the red light therapy. I was like, this is gonna like save me, basically. So I kept like searching for that one thing that would just clear my skin back up to what I knew it used to be like. So like fast forward, we move out of that house and move to Miami. It's where my boyfriend actually is from. So everything was opening back up for COVID, and he's been in the hospitality industry his whole career. So it kind of made sense for him to kind of jump back into a job. He has a network down there. I wanted a change. I'm born and raised in Connecticut.
yeah.
So we moved to Miami in an apartment building downtown. And I noticed a little bit of relief. I know I told you in my blog, I had a OBGYN in Connecticut who I met, and I'm like, I had a mask on because it was COVID, and I'm like pulling down my mask. Like,
look at this.
I'm like, I hated masks, but part of me loved hiding my face behind it. At the time, it was just like a really weird time of my life where I just felt like I needed to hide from the world. And so I pulled my mask down, and I was like, can you please like I was having chronic yeast infections at the time. And I'm like, are these related? Like, I have no idea what's going on with my skin. And she's like, no, like totally different, microbiome,
What?
system going on. And so I was like, okay, I had a gut feeling. I'm like, I don't believe that. They have to have some correlation. My skin just went haywire at the same time I started getting chronic yeast infection. So she prescribed me 30 diflucan, which is an antifungal. And so I just completely like stayed closed off to the connection that those two had and hadn't even thought of my gut health at that point.
Mm.
So I'm in Miami with like a bottle full of pills basically. And I think the stress of the move triggered it again. And so my face kind of, really flared up. I took some antifungals and I'm like, okay, that almost cleared it up. Like day by day, it was kind of getting clearer. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. I'm like healed.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like a couple days would go by and I maybe had 2 full days of like clear skin. And then it would come back. So I was just like so frustrated at this point, just like my mind is getting the best of me now because the thoughts I'm feeding myself, the person I'm becoming is just so far from what I knew. I'm beating myself up over this. I'm so frustrated. And so at the same time, my friend had kind of been pushing like mold toxicity posts my way and like kind of helping me understand that this is a candida and mold issue going on. So that kind of started opening my eyes a lot. And then, but we were still in Miami. So we were still sleeping next to our Wi-Fi router. Basically, it was in our bedroom closet.
No.
Being in an apartment complex in general, no matter how much you try to protect yourself, your neighbors are still,
Yeah.
you're getting the exposure
Hmm.
in the city also. So I hadn't really known what was going on too much at that point, but it was starting to come together and my eyes were starting to open a little more. And then Kip and I were, we knew who Joe Dispenza was. We really wanted to go to one of his week-long retreats. And so it worked out where January of 2022, we ended up going to Marco Island for a week-long advanced retreat. And it was incredible. It really kind of educated us more on the quantum field, the power of like frequency and how energy works and all of that. So that had really opened my eyes also to the thoughts I was feeding myself.
Mm.
And the way I was beating myself up and telling me, I was telling myself how ugly I was and how everybody's looking at my skin and, that I wasn't worthy and all of this. And after that week long, I started really changing the way I talk to myself and some revelations happened. And, it was really a cool part of the journey, still completely unaware to all of the EMFs and frequencies that we were getting bombarded with. But lo and behold, probably a month or two when we were home from that retreat, Kip got some Aries Tech ads served to his phone. And he is really good at going down the rabbit hole. And he's the one that brings a lot of conversations to the table, like, and educates me and opens my eyes. We have a really good like partnership in that sense where he will bring like all this education on supplements and like home products.
Hmm.
And then I'll be like, nowadays I'm like bringing the shampoo and conditioner, the baby products. Like we have a good partnership in that sense. Like we work like
That's
a good.
cool.
So I trust him and I leave it to him kind of. So he had been served this ad. He's like, this guy who's on this ad looks really familiar. And lo and behold, it's Dr. I'm sorry.
Douglas. Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Douglas, who had been on the stage at Joe Dispenza. So he was one of the scientists on stage, kind of, educating us at the retreat about like the brain waves and all of that. So having that connection was cool. Immediately, it kind of built trust. We're like, we just saw this guy on stage at Joe Dispenza.
That's so cool that he was at
Yeah.
Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, I know. It was really wild. So we had trust for this product right away, and we had been talking at that time about like the importance of EMFs. It was kind of just beginning to be something we were opening our eyes to. So yeah, he got served the ad and then probably waited a week or so. He's like, I really want to get this product. So he got the LifeTune 1 and it's a sticker. So I have it on the back of my phone case, but he really like loves necklaces. So he just stuck it onto the back of a shungite necklace
Mm.
and just put it under his shirt every day. And so I am naturally skeptical. I just let him lead. So I'm like, okay. So then he's like, a couple of weeks go by, he's like really encouraging me to buy it. I'm like, okay, I will. And then we have the moving out of Miami. So Miami itself was like awesome for the year that we were there, but we were ready to move out. After a year, we broke our lease a year early and moved back up north. And that's about the time I was like, okay, this needs to be something that I own because we had downsized our living arrangements. And so I was working in the same room that we were sleeping. And so I'm like, I don't feel comfortable having my laptop in this room and my monitor and my phone, everything going on. So let me look into this Aries Tech again. And so I got the LifeTune 1 for my phone case, and I got the Zone Max, the biggest one. I just felt like that would really protect the room that we were in. According to like the square footage, I was like, okay, cool, we'll be protected with this. And I just feel comfortable having the biggest one.
Yeah. Quick break in the episode, you guys, because I got to tell you about the amazing sponsor, Aries Tech. Aries Tech creates cream of the crop, top of the line EMF protection devices that do not interfere with your signal, but all of their technology is actually backed by peer-reviewed, patent, and published research that has been going on for almost 20 years. They were originally funded a couple decades ago by the military to create a medical device that would help protect men and women who are working on radio signal towers without interfering with the signal, and have since become a consumer product as we have become more of a technological world. They're also used by professional athletes like Tiki Barber from the NFL Giants and Macy Barber from the UFC for performance optimization tools. You can go to their website, ariestech.com, and check out some really amazing studies where they've done some EEGs to show how these devices are affecting your baseline brain activity. It's really, really cool. I personally have one on me right now near me because I have my phone, my computer, my camera, everything going on all at once in an office building where everyone has their own Wi-Fi. So I don't mess around. Check them out, ariestech.com. Use code INTUNE, INTUNE, TUNE 30 for 30% off your entire order.
So it had been Velcroed to the wall for a while, and I have a picture of it. Like, it was so cute. I remember I was like, I need a picture of this because it's so pretty. It's such a pretty device.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, yeah, I need to take this everywhere. So I just started slipping it in my bag, and it didn't live too long on the wall.
So did you ever go down the rabbit hole of like learning how EMFs affect mold growth?
Yes, that came after the fact, actually. Like, I hadn't realized it right away. But then once I started seeing that like probably months to a year after I had the device. I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, with like fungal infections and stuff too, like really makes you think. Because I went through something similar when I was living in Australia, and I was vegan at the time and was going through chronic infections, like sinus infection, yeast infection. There's just so much going on, and I couldn't figure out what was happening. And the same thing happened. They gave me like antifungals. They made them worse. Like I did not get better from them at all. I got a lot worse. But I never really thought about like the EMF aspect of it, and how I would always like, especially like living when I was in Australia, I would live in these like small places, that were just like Wi-Fi's plugged in right in the room. And it wasn't until I had my son that I really started paying attention to it, because he ended up having something called jejunal atresia. And I was like, wait a second, like I did everything correct. I ate all organic, like I did all the things. What the heck's going on? And the only information we got from our surgeon was, oh, well, it happens within the first couple weeks of gestation. And it's just like, that's all we got. Like, he was like, it just happens sometimes in the first couple of weeks of gestation. I was like, this is so interesting. And I thought back to like where I was living when I was first pregnant with him. And we lived in like a 200 square foot, like little cabin, but our Wi-Fi was plugged into our bedroom. And we were sleeping there every night and like living our day there every day. And I was like, after that, it was like, I'll never be able to prove that that's what happened. That'll always be up in the air. People can always debate me on it or whatever. But that was definitely the moment where I was like, I'm going to start paying attention to this.
Yeah.
And then it was like a constant thing with my husband. Did you unplug the Wi-Fi? Sure.
Yeah, I have a very similar story. So when we moved out of Miami, I kind of like bundle this where we moved, because it's a little confusing, but Kip had a hospitality gig in the Hamptons.
Okay.
So
that's where I'm from.
Oh, really?
My family's from Long Island. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so they had a room for him for a short, like 3 months. So I
Okay.
actually moved back in with family for 3 months. And then when that gig was over, the hospitality group he was a part of, there's just a different restaurant he goes to. So
Okay.
then we ended up living together. So while I was in Connecticut with my family, that's when I got the Aries Tech. And then when I joined him in Southampton, I still had the Aries Tech, but our Wi-Fi was also under the bed, right underneath the bed, literally.
Oh my gosh.
It was also a 500 square foot, just
Right.
like shoebox. So that's when I was really like, I am so glad I have this device, but like, I'm also gonna rip the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi out every night.
Yes.
And
Yes.
just we'd switch it off. And that's the first time we started switching it off. And then I was like, that's when I started going back in my journey and realizing like Miami, we were being absolutely bombarded. My first house in Connecticut, my Wi-Fi was like right where I spent the most time.
Yeah.
And so it made sense because when I was in mold and exposed to EMF, my symptoms were haywire, like absolutely awful. And then when I wasn't exposed to mold, but still being bombarded by EMF, I saw some relief, but not quite. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until I was not only out of the mold, but protecting myself from EMF and unplugging the Wi-Fi that like my health just propelled forward. And I actually saw some meaningful change. So it's cool looking back because I didn't piece those together while it was
Yeah.
happening. But I look back in hindsight and they are so closely correlated. It's
It
crazy.
is so wild. Almost every interview I've done, like it's come down to, and it almost sounds like it makes us all sound crazy because, but then it's cool because it's like, okay, I've had all these people tell their story of like, it's like either they had Lyme disease and then they got mold toxicity and then they got super hypersensitive to EMF, or they had mold toxicity, then they had food sensitivities, and then they get super sensitive to EMF. And it's like it all sounds so like, it's like all sounds too similar and it sounds crazy and all the things. And then you talk to someone like Dr. Jill Carnahan. I don't know if you know who she is, but she is like, you should look her up. She's amazing. And I was so grateful to have her on the podcast, but she's a functional medicine doctor, and she's like a mold and environmental toxin expert. And she was explaining that like the first thing that I know that if someone comes in and they say, I can feel my phone when I'm getting it close to my head, or like I feel like I can feel the Wi-Fi when I walk into a room. She's like, I know immediately that their toxic load, like their bucket is overflowing. Like if they are sensitive to EMF, and that doesn't mean that EMF is not impacting us on the day to day and impacting our cells every day. There's so many studies showing that. But like usually if someone is actually feeling it, like they're feeling those frequencies, then it means that their bucket is just overflowing and that they have just like absolute toxic overload with mold, with like whatever it is in their environment. Usually the first thing she kind of goes to is mold because it's just such a common thing. It's so common. It's like, what is it? 70% of houses or something will experience mold toxicity.
I know, it's crazy how I was always asleep to it. And then all of a sudden I feel like everybody's being affected by it.
Right. Well, and that makes so much sense.
It does because all of the all of the frequencies
Okay. So Dr. Jill came on, explained the impact mold is having on, or the impact EMF has on mold. So she's like, okay, well, we know that it grows like 600 times faster, like by 600% when it's in the presence of mold or of EMF. And then a mold expert came in who's been like a inspector and remediator for like 10 years. And she said that she has seen such an increase of mold in people's homes. Like she was like, as a kid, even in the home that I lived in as a kid, we had like leaking issues and different stuff, but we never had mold issues, and we never had, like it was like maybe little bits, but now it's like you go into people's homes and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like a problem. It's a really big problem. And so she now does, which I think is so cool, she does EMF remediation at the same time that she does mold remediation, because she truly believes that the reason it's become such a thing and that it's exacerbated so much is because we're literally bombarded by EMFs, which is causing this mold to grow by 600 times. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I know.
When they made that connection, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about that, because mold is such a thing right now. It's almost like eye roll. Everybody has mold, toxicity, but it's so true. I mean, we had the same thing in our previous home. we all like, and it was like one of those things where you just kind of have to like, your intuition kind of kicks in on it, where it was like, this is for sure what's going on. Like, it doesn't make sense with the way that we eat, with our environment, with like how we take care of ourselves. It doesn't make sense that my kids are getting sick like every week.
Doing all of the things.
Yeah.
And especially it could be so taboo and like the eye roll, because everybody's symptoms are a little different.
Right.
Like one person with mold will have severe brain fog and fatigue, whereas my symptoms are, I think, just manifesting as skin issues.
Right.
So it's just crazy, like the spectrum of symptoms that it can give.
So did you not really know about EMF until Aries Tech came into your world? Is that kind of when you started paying attention?
It was around the same time. We had
Okay.
kind of been exposed to some of the information about it, like maybe a month before Aries Tech.
Yeah, so it was very
around the
similar.
same time. Yeah,
Yeah.
the timelines match up pretty well.
That's
And
cool.
that's kind of what just pushed us towards really researching it more.
Especially in apartments, guys, if you're listening to this, like one of my good friends, I went over to visit her in Colorado, and I walked outside our house and I was like, oh my gosh, she has every single apartment complex's smart meter on the outside of her wall and her bedroom. I was like, you have got to move bedrooms. you,
Yeah.
you have to like completely rearrange your whole house. Because that is scary to have. Like, people don't realize that. I posted about that a while ago, and so many people commented with like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I am one of those apartments that has every single smart meter for the entire complex on the wall, which those are all feeding into, it's almost like a cell phone going all the time. It's feeding back information to the facilities every day, multiple times a day. So anyway, that's super crazy. So when did you start seeing like, when did everything start changing for you? Like when was that you started having all of the shifts? Because obviously you look amazing. So you're not experiencing that anymore.
I'm still dealing with it at a very like, it's still kind of lingering. I actually finally started working with a practitioner on it, but everything started going the other direction really when we were in that Southampton home. And I had the, device and we were turning the Wi-Fi off. That's
amazing.
I remember finally having clear skin, and I'm just like high on life. I'm like, this is what I've been like praying about for so long.
Aww.
It's really happening. And then, we had left Miami and both stopped drinking, just like a life choice. We finally like opened our eyes to it. Not that it was like a serious problem, but we lived in Miami. It was definitely something that was in our life.
Yeah.
So we stopped drinking. And then, so in Southampton, we got pregnant unexpectedly.
Aww.
And we just felt like our health was really at a peak there. Back in nature, grounding every day, going outside, stepping on the grass. It was a huge combination of everything that we were doing. But I truly feel like the Aries Tech and protecting ourselves against EMF and unplugging the Wi-Fi was just such like the missing link for us.
I love that so much. I love hearing these stories. That's what, like, it's so funny that, like, I was so skeptical of air. I think everybody should be skeptical of everything at this point, honestly, especially with like how you can just pay people to do third-party studies and, get the results that you want. I mean, I think everybody's eyes are kind of open to the fact that we really do. It sounds another thing that sounds taboo. It sounds silly, but like, do your own research. You really do have to do your own research, and you have to know how to do research well. And that's one thing that we've had some researchers come on here, like Dr. Kent, who's the president of the Environmental Health Trust, and really break down how to like look at a research paper, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, okay, we say do your own research, but we're not talking about like Instagram research, we're not like, don't take everything at, at face value. But yeah, just like learning how to like really digest everything. I feel like I went through a period of time with Aries where I was just so skeptical. I had the CEO of my old podcast to talk about like, where did this product come from? Because that was one thing that I think really helped me just like invite it in, like to really invite it in as a solution for our family, because learning the history of it, of like, okay, this wasn't something where like someone woke up and was like, okay, I see that everyone is afraid of EMFs right now. So like, I'm going to launch a sticker and like problem solve this and have a bunch of like third-party tests that I paid for to like sell this product. It was like, okay, no, the guy who created this product, he actually was an engineer for the military, and his family created medical devices for the military, and he was hired by the military to create a medical device that would protect like soldiers who are on basically like those those like portable radio signal towers because they were reporting a lot of side effects. So his like whole mission was to create a product that would still like that would support their body's ability to contend with all of the frequencies, but also not interfere with the signals because obviously they need to be able to communicate. So that started decades ago. And then like fast forward, his son Dimitri starts seeing all the iPhones be deployed and, you know, all of this stuff is happening. And he's like, wait a second, like we already have a solution for this. And then they created a consumer product. And so I really liked that about the product, about the fact that it started with research and it didn't start with an idea about creating a product for consumer. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, no, this is a funded situation where it's like, we want you to go seek out the solution for this thing. It's not like, okay, I see that I can make a lot of money here.
Yeah.
Because you see that everywhere. And I think Aries gets kind of looped in a lot to those products. And I totally had the same feeling about it when I first started kind of diving in of just like all of the products you see on Amazon that you can, the stickers and the bracelets and all the things. And then when you really start seeing like, okay, this is like, there's third party published, or there's peer reviewed published research. There's, you know, people like Dr. Dogers who are coming in from the outside and like they're personally surprised by the results, you know, like I'm like, okay, yeah. I love Dr. Dogers. I really hope we can have him on the podcast. Shout out to Dr. Dogers, come on the podcast. Because I think it's just really fun to hear from like neurologists on their like that was the other thing was like when he had done that demonstration, because even though there were studies showing the impact on EEG, I feel like the demonstration was that was like, okay, I can see it now. I understand that this is like impacting us in a different way. You're not gonna be able to measure it with an EMF reader. It's actually like boosting your body's natural ability to contend with these EMFs, which is really what we need because I don't think this is going away. So like we can't walk around in a Faraday bubble all day, you know?
Exactly.
We're going to have to train our body to.
Yeah. And that backstory is really what helped us trust this product even more too, because we were seeing all the stickers and all the like wearables, and those might have a time and place, but we really, we liked that this backstory being in the military, you know, starting there and then consumer side. That was huge. That was definitely important, especially because like everybody's like, okay, well, it might be the placebo effect, like live in your bubble.
Right.
I'm like, you know what, even if it is, it did allow my body to feel like this place of safety that I can just not have this one more thing to worry about. And I think at the time, like it made sense to me, like even the Joe Dispenza week long, we learned a lot about, you know, signals are either informing your cells like coherence. They're either coherent signals or they're incoherent signals.
Here we go. You got introduced to all that.
Yeah, all of that. So at the same time, it's all coming together that these frequencies are causing some incoherence in the body. And if your body's constantly like receiving those signals, how can it, like the body is designed to heal. And that's one thing I constantly told myself, but I had to help it get to that place because, you know, these EMFs are part of the problem of why it feels safe and feel like it can finally balance and find coherence among the chaos. So getting
out of that mold was definitely step one, because that was the other thing I learned from Dr. Joe was like, you cannot heal if you're still in it. You can like you can try to keep the bucket from like overflowing and just keep it at bay, but like you're not going to be able to like decrease that toxic load until you get out of the environment, which is really hard for people to do. That's really tricky. She's like, you can keep it at bay. And she'll recommend that. Like if you can't get out right now and you're trying to find a place or whatever, like do all the things to keep it at bay. Make sure you're mitigating that EMF. Make sure you're, you know, giving the body what it can to contend with the mold. But getting out of that, I feel like is always step one.
Totally.
And then you're giving the body resources to heal. After that, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. And I've had friends who I've been carrying this around and they're like, oh, cool. So are we protected? Like wherever we go with you? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. And then some friends have been like, it's just another thing. Like, I just don't have the capacity for it right now. And my answer is like, that's cool. I get it. We're living in like, there's so much information at your fingertips. Like it's the food, it's the, you know, all of these products that are being sold your way. And so like, I get that it's one more thing to worry about. And some people just prefer not to worry about it. But I feel like it's just a really important step to get to once you're there and just knowing that just because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not affecting you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know. The importance of EMF just keeps trickling into my life. Like, I never thought I would be hosting a podcast about EMF. Like, that was not on the agenda. I had other agendas, you know what I mean? But it was like, as I started, especially with the podcast, like really learning, because, I have my own intuitions. But like, intuition only gets you so far. Whenever you're trying to explain something to somebody, they're like, oh yeah, so you like, you just feel like it works or whatever. And also, like, even if we do our own research, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher. So that even if I do my own research, or my husband, we're a really great team on that because he's an environmental scientist. So he will walk through research with me. And I make my decision. I still am not good at explaining it. So like, I'll look at something and be like, okay, no, I'm really sure that this is working for me and I'm going to continue, but it's hard for me to explain. So the podcast, like getting people like you coming and telling your story of like, this is my kind of trajectory of like how I came to realize it. And then also getting the other side of like all of the researchers and the medical professionals who are like very legitimate and who can like explain it very well and who have like this this background and research to be able to just lay it all out. And it's like, okay, and then it just solidifies more and more like the fact that we are not like, that this isn't like mainstream, that we're not having a little bit more of a fit about the fact that this is just being deployed all around us right now while we're just kind of part of this like experiment, you know what I mean?
Totally. I know. That's when all the conspiracy theories. I'm
like, I know I call it an experiment, but I'm like, it really is. I mean, we're going to see how this impacts us over the next couple decades of, having the deployment. It's not really a conspiracy when you look at the fact that there's not a whole lot of research about 5G. There's a ton of research about 4G, 3G, 2G, so much research about like the original phones and how they can cause tumors in the brain and all this stuff that is there.
Yeah.
But we don't have enough research about 5G. Okay, but can we like make some assumptions based on all these other bandwidths that are millions of times less or millions of times like shorter waves, less fast. I don't know how you say that, but than what is now. Like when you go from 2G to 3G to 4G to 5G, it's not just like a 20% increase in frequency. You're going from megahertz to gigahertz. And then you're going from like 900 megahertz to 300 gigahertz, which is millions of times faster than the old phone. So that's an important note, guys.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Okay. So I see you are blowing up on the socials right now. What happened there?
Honestly, I just wanted to, I like being a creator on Instagram. Before I got pregnant, I was roller skating and I had my own little corner of the internet doing that.
That's so fun.
And yeah, postpartum, I really thought I'd get back into it. And I'm like, struggling to find the time to really step away from myself in that regard. So I'm like, let me just share my lifestyle. Like, this is something that it's who I am and I don't have to overthink it or, it's not just a niche, like one niche of roller skating. Let me just show, how I'm doing things in this regard and everything, share the products that I truly love and use. So I just started creating from like a lifestyle point of view. And yeah, I think the recent reel with my little sister blew up.
Every day I go check on your page because I've been like kind of stalking you in order to prep for the podcast. And so we just got to do that. But every time I go to your page, I'm like, what the hell? I've been pretty sure she has 2,000 followers since yesterday.
Yeah. No, it's funny. It's definitely one of that reel. And then I did a little like challenge with my boyfriend. If I hit a certain amount of followers, in 30 days, he would buy our family goats. And I totally missed that mark. It was so fun. I was able to put myself out there. It was very humbling. Every day I was
so
like,
cute.
I want to quit this. And my boyfriend was actually my biggest hype man. He's like, no, you got this. Like, it's not about getting the followers. It's not about getting the goats. It's about finishing something that you start.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, all right. I'll keep doing it. It's super humbling right now. But so yeah, I got a little momentum that way. And my plan for the future is just to keep sharing our lifestyle. We're moving from Arizona back to Connecticut just next week. So we hope to kind of manifest the whole goat challenge. Hopefully that'll
Where
be
are you in Arizona?
We're in Scottsdale.
Okay. Where is that in relation to like Phoenix?
It's like 15, 20 minutes from Phoenix.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to be there tomorrow.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yes,
that's
I'm
so
meeting
funny.
with some of the Aries Tech team, and we're making like it's actually the first time some of the team members are coming together, and we're making some footage and stuff. And then doing a
Fun.
episode with Macy Barber, the UFC fighter. She's gonna
That's
be
so
on the
fun.
podcast. But yeah, okay, so we're doing a giveaway together, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Yes.
so
Okay, so if you're listening to this episode, you got to go to Cassie's page. What's your page?
crunchy Cass.
Crunchy Cass,
Hey,
KASS.
yeah.
Yeah. And she's going to tell you what to do on that post to enter
Yeah.
to win a Zone Max,
Yeah.
which is our biggest device, Aries' biggest device, which is awesome. Very pricey item. So it's a great option or a great chance to win one of those, because that's all we always try to do, as many giveaways and discounts and all the things as we possibly can to make sure that people have access to the devices, because that's one of our biggest things is I see now having been part of the team is like, okay, people want lower prices, so we got to just do more for them as much as we can to get options for them to or opportunities for them to get the product. Okay, where else can people find you? Is it just Crunchy Cass?
That's crunchy Cass for right now.
Okay. I love that you are just like sharing your whole life, because it's a lot of pressure to like hone in on one thing. And then you have, like every day you feel like you have to post that one thing.
Yeah, I'm still like, I'd say in the corner of, low tox living,
Right.
and motherhood. And then just stories, just all about my life and Kip and I, and just, I don't like to put myself in a corner, or
Yeah.
like put myself too far into a niche. So yeah, it's just my lifestyle.
I love that. I've tried doing that many times on my personal and then end up just being like, nah, all right, we're just going to keep it a little bit of everything.
Exactly.
I just call myself the multi-passionate mama. That way, there's a lot of other things come in.
I love it.
Thank you so much, Cassie. I so appreciate you being here. And maybe we can see each other while I'm in Arizona. I'll message you.
Yeah, let me know.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out the show notes at wave.ariestech.com.